Among Us has been around a long time actually, but it finally hit now. And some things aren't as obvious as others. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things Among Us doesn't tell you. Starting off with number 10, some tips for playing crewmates. This is a simple one, but it's important. If you are new to the game and don't know how to do all the crew tasks, open up free play and just do all the available tasks on a map on your own. There are only a few kind of tricky tasks in the game. Most of them are really easy, but just knowing where to go and what to do immediately upon starting a game will make you a much better crewmate right from the start. It's also good to stay safe in numbers. If you can group up with other crewmates, it's always a good way to protect yourself from imposters. Try not to get too close to other players though, because when you start overlapping, it becomes harder to tell what's happening, and it gives the imposter an opportunity to strike while retaining a certain amount of deniability. So stay close, not too close though, and you'll be able to avoid confusion while possibly having a better idea as to who is what. One thing you're definitely going to want to do as a crewmate though is have a good alibi in case a clever imposter starts pointing fingers. Or if your crew is just paranoid and dumb, which is something that happens, to be clear. Standing in front of active cameras is always a smart move when you see them, as well as standing around in a common area that people pass through a lot, like let's say the cafe on the Skeld or the office on Polis. Of course, doing this sort of thing is also useful for an imposter if they want to look normal, but you'll probably end up having a lot more time idle as a crewmate, so do it in safer spots like these. Otherwise, just running around the map, allowing people to see you is also a good strategy. Like, try to avoid being alone for too long, but find people moving around and pass by them so an imposter can't get an easy kill on you as well. If people do start thinking that you're an imposter, like when you're not, an easy way to prove that you're crew is to hold on to an easy to demonstrate task for when they start questioning, like the scan or the asteroid shooting task. These have really obvious animations that wouldn't play if you were an imposter, so it's surefire proof that you are for real. And number 9, some tips for playing imposter. First, be a good player when you're not the imposter. Doing your tasks, being consistent, not making dumb accusations are easy ways to quickly earn your team's trust, and they'll be less likely to accuse you when you actually are an imposter. It's just part of knowing how to play the game. Now, when you are an imposter, always try to look like you're innocent. Do normal stuff, stick with the group, and when everyone else starts splitting up, don't go after the only solitary crew member on the map, otherwise they're gonna know that you're the imposter. Best sabotage you can do, cut the lights. Makes it easier to sneak around and take other players out without being spotted. Probably easiest way to kill people is cut the lights, then wait for a crew member to come fix it, just kill them. A lot of people are onto this strategy though, and will go repair the lights in groups. So don't just wait on the right in the top of the repair area for people to show up, like hide somewhere and see who arrives before making your move. A smart strategy you can do is try to sabotage something, then perform a fake repair on it. Obviously, it's going to be pretty suspicious if someone sees you go into a room, then that room is sabotaged, and then you're doing repairs a second later. But if you're pretty sure nobody saw anything, it can be a really useful strategy. Be sure to not open the panel during the fake sabotage, as that stops your kill timer. Only open it while someone else comes in so you don't seem suspicious. Be careful about closing doors. Like, closed doors around dead bodies kind of makes things suspicious automatically, and if you get caught in the same room with a body and a closed door, you're probably going to get accused. On a similar note, it's also important to know how all the vents connect. Like, if somebody gets killed in security and another player's alibi is that they were in the medbay, that doesn't usually clear them with suspicion because those two vents are connected. Less aware players might be fooled by this kind of thing, so knowing how the vents connect and what rooms are suspicious is very important to be a good imposter. Also, make false accusations only after someone else is wrong. Like, if someone accuses someone else of being an imposter, but they screw up and it leads to that crew member getting ejected, then that makes the accuser immediately suspicious, even if they're only guilty of screwing up that accusation. It doesn't always work, so don't go too far with your accusation, but many times just a few words is enough to get everyone to turn on somebody they don't already trust. Really, depending on your game settings, an imposter that doesn't actually kill anyone is a totally viable strategy. Just perform a few sabotages, get people suspicious, trick the crew into killing themselves. It's not a surefire thing, but many times an imposter that never kills can be more effective than one that does. On probably the most common map, Skeld, the best spots for being an imposter and ambushing people are in the med bay, security, and electrical, as they're all connected by a vent. Electrical is especially good for getting people, so much so that it has basically become a meme. All three of these are connected by a vent, but are difficult to reach separately, and it's easy to get someplace else from there if you need to have an alibi. If your crew, don't go to these areas without a group unless you're absolutely sure it's safe. There's not much that can really be said for this. Imposters just love this spot on the Skeld, so be careful. At number 8, our favorite settings. Like, one very nice feature in Among Us is the ability to tweak and change a ton of gameplay settings. There's a ton of stuff that can make your game a lot more fun by tweaking just a couple little things, but it's also possible to make the game a total mess, or at the very least, make it really unbalanced for either the crewmates or the imposter. Pretty much everyone has a different idea of how a game of Among Us should go. Some people think the game should go fast without much discussion. Others prefer the game go slow and have it basically turn out being a friggin' podcast where everyone's talking about and deciding who the imposter is, like friggin' true crime or something. This is just stuff the gameranx crew kind of likes, so don't take any of this as gospel or anything. As we run down the settings, we'll try and justify why we chose this stuff, so you at least know where we're coming from. Generally, we prefer somewhat more methodical games. We don't want to make things out and out boring, but I think the discussion and voting parts of the game are kind of what make it stand out. Player count defaulted at 10. You're not always going to see that many people, but the settings we're talking about usually good for 8, but anything less than 8, kind of wonky. 2 imposters we kind of like best, and the full game having only 1 imposter makes the game really difficult for imposters. Like, that's a lot of people you're going to have to kill, and only 1 slip up means the game is over. With 2, it complicates things nicely without making things out and out unfair. Whereas having 3 imposters, in my experience at least, is just completely unbalanced. It doesn't work. Another option I think makes the game more interesting is turning confirm ejects off. When this setting is on, it'll tell you the person you injected was an imposter. Having it off makes it so that the crewmates don't get an easy answer and have to think a little bit harder about who they're ejecting. Like, it's obviously pointless if you're playing a game with only a single imposter, but with 2 coming off confirm ejects can make the game a lot more interesting. Also, how many emergency meetings you can call is a really interesting setting. I like keeping it at 1 personally. Now, it's the number you personally can call, not the total number that are allowed, so you'll see more than 1. But a quick meeting can save your life from an imposter, so knowing when to call them is also really important. General consensus on the kill cooldown option is generally lower end, 20-25 seconds. It affects how much time it takes for an imposter to recharge their kill ability, and shortening it can make it so the imposter can still pull out some clutch moves if they're smart. And again, the game is kind of weighted against imposters when there's 1 or 2. Still, another setting that might not be a bad idea is making kill distance short. It does kind of help the crew get away from an imposter. It makes it so that imposters have to be a little more tactical, and we think that generally makes the game a little more interesting. For emergency cooldown, 15-20 seconds is good because you want it to be faster than the kill cooldown. I like turning up player speed, but only a little bit, like 1.25x. Default speed just a little bit too slow. Like, as far as discussion and voting time, also going with the default options is fine, but I like to bump up the discussion time a little bit into something like 30 seconds. And, adjusting the voting time accordingly by making it a little bit shorter. It forces players to have to discuss things before voting, otherwise some players will just vote for whatever without thinking. Either way, the standard options here are pretty good. Just when players make these options really short, it becomes a problem in my opinion. People start voting to eject crewmates kind of randomly instead of actually discussing, and that is not strategic, it's just senseless. Crewmate and imposter vision affects how far each player can see. Like, you want the imposter to have longer vision than the crewmates. Default options are alright. Bumping up the crew vision and imposter vision by about 0.25, not bad. It makes the crewmates not so nearsighted while still making the imposter's vision good without being too good. So 1.25 for crewmate, 1.75 for imposter. That's our preference here. Another option is to actually lower the crewmate vision to something like 0.75, so it makes the imposter like distinctly in a better position, especially when the imposter sabotages the lights. Last, and this is really important, common tasks can take a medium amount of time. Short tasks can take a short amount of time. Obviously, long, you have to run around the ship, etc., etc. You get the point. I prefer more long tasks, generally 2 rather than 1, and few short tasks, like 3. Then common at either 1 or 0. This leads to some longer games, but with the people I play with, it just tends to work out better. Now, if you play with people who just screw around or don't bother actually doing the task, then might want to make a task-like game. It can still be interesting, but if you're trying to play the game quote-unquote for real, it's good to give the imposters opportunities to attack. That's why I like the longer ones. Obviously, again, these are just the ones that we prefer here. At number 7 is mobile versus PC. A noteworthy thing about Among Us is it can be played on both mobile and PC. There's some differences between the two versions. I, of course, have my own personal preferences, and so do you, but let's run down some of those differences before we talk about which is which. Big one, on PC, Among Us is $5 on Steam, and on mobile, it's free. That is a big deciding factor. Even if the game is very cheap on PC, and it is, free is always better. The problem is, the free mobile version is going to hit you with ads every so often, and wow, do these get irritating. Mid-roll game ads is just like the worst. That may not bother you, and if that's the case, obviously free is fine, but it bothers me. On PC, it's easier to move around using the keyboard. Some of the task minigames can be kind of awkward. However, probably the biggest upside on PC is being able to type much faster than on mobile, depending on your device, of course. Mobile controls in comparison are actually pretty decent. Yeah, it's a digital joystick, and if you hate those, there's no change in your mind, but if you're used to them, it's pretty good. The task minigames feel a little more natural on mobile as well, but either way, they're not particularly hard to pull off. Visually, the different versions are pretty much identical, so no downside there. I kind of like the mobile version better. However, I hate the ads. At number 6 is how to spot a cheater. Now that Among Us has become this big surprise hit, there's people trying to cheat it. It's that simple. There's two main methods people cheat, either with a cheat engine or by working with someone else through Discord. At the moment, the developers are working on an account system to make cheat engines more difficult, but until then, the best thing you can do is basically let the host of the game know someone's cheating if you know it. They can get removed from the game. Cheaters tend to be fairly obvious because there's little in the way of repercussions for cheating. Like, the worst that can happen is they're booted from a game, but yeah, get them booted. Some of the major things to keep an eye out for are people who move faster, or know who the imposter is immediately and voting instantly, or just kill everyone. It's really annoying, but at the moment, there's only so much you can do. Easiest cheating to get away with is just talking to someone else through Discord or some other voice over IP thing. If one dies, they tell their friend through Discord who killed them, and then their friends tell everyone who the imposter is in the emergency meeting. Easiest way to spot this sort of thing, look for the pattern. Is someone calling other people imposters without any evidence to back it up, and are they right every time? They're probably cheating. I mean, there are people playing the game in good faith that are actually just good at the game, so don't just assume everyone's a cheater, but keep your eyes out. It's bad enough having to deal with imposters. Having to worry about fellow crewmates cheating on top of it does make the game worse. Surefire solution, play a well-moderated private group. There's plenty of them out there. The Among Us LFG Discord server is great for finding like-minded players. Otherwise, just play with your friends, as long as you can trust your friends. Do you trust your friends? And number 5 is vent strategies. Outside of the stuff we've already talked about regarding vents, there's a few other important things to know about using them. Vents are not a free move. You can get caught, either from the telltale signs of your last location in maps like the Skeld or Polis. There are more complicated systems as well, like the door log in Mira HQ. How Mira HQ works regarding vents is a little complicated, but we can talk about that for a second here. You see, in that map, all the vents are connected, which would normally give the imposter a huge advantage, but if you're able to make use of some of the door logs, then imposters can be a lot easier to catch. There's 3 sensors on the map, one in the north that flashes blue when you pass it, one in the southwest that flashes green when you pass it, and one in the southeast that flashes orange when you pass it. Because vents would bypass these sensors, that means if someone isn't logged by a sensor but went between 2 rooms you'd normally have to pass the sensor to get to, that means they're probably an imposter. Or weird. There's a few things you can do as an imposter to avoid getting caught by the door logs. One is to keep an eye on the communications room. You see when somebody checking their logs, just go through the vent and make sure you actually pass through the hallway so you don't get caught. You should also think about getting rid of that crew member, as anyone smart enough to check the door logs is probably someone you should focus on killing. Good strategy for killing someone while avoiding suspicion with sensors, just use admin as an imposter and find a lone crew member, vent into the room they're in, kill them, and then vent back to admin. Because all the vents are connected in that map, you can just say you never left admin if anyone questions you. At number 4, cameras can work for you, but they can also work against you. They're obviously an incredibly useful thing in the game, but you gotta be smart how you use them. A camera with a red light on it means someone is looking through that camera, basically meaning you are safe. Of course, if there's an imposter looking through the camera and the light is still red, you're actually vulnerable still, but remember that red means someone is watching. It's important to know where cameras are placed on maps, like the Skeld and Polis have cameras, so look at a map for both these areas, and you know where you're safe. If you crew and you man the cameras, make sure to keep an eye on all the approaches to the security room, as you're a prime target for the imposter. If you see anyone approaching, even if you think they're okay, it's probably smart to leave security for a moment and make sure they're not coming to kill you. Alternating between cameras and your regular view is gonna keep you alive. More of a trick you can pull: if you see something kind of suspicious, like a guy you might think is the imposter, waiting in front of a camera, exit the camera so it looks like nobody's watching for a second, and get back on security and see if someone ended up dead. Because the red light goes out, the imposter might think nobody's watching, but if you do this, it'll be pretty obvious who the imposter is. And at number 3, how to spot the difference between fake tasks and real tasks. An important thing to know about tasks is when they're fake. If you can differentiate them, that's going to be big for you. For crew, you want to be able to spot fake tasks, as certain ones have some pretty clear giveaways, while if you're an imposter, it's important to know which ones will appear real, won't have the animation attached to them that a regular quote-unquote real task would. For example, certain fake tests an imposter can get are totally worthless, like the medbay scan, which doesn't actually look like you're being scanned. Also, if it's not actually making the progress bar move, that task is probably fake. Don't be too quick to accuse people though, as some tasks do require multiple parts before it moves, but be suspicious. So if you're an imposter and somebody's watching you faking a task, just wait for someone else to complete a real task and move the progress bar up, and that is your opportunity to walk away. I mean, it just to them looks like you did a task. Possibly. I mean, of course, if somebody's really keyed in the game and know how long tasks take, it's kind of useless, but still, you don't know how skilled they are. The developers are working on an update to make fake tasks more useful and less confusing, so this whole situation should be less complicated in the future, but for now, it's good to know which ones look real and which ones don't. At number 2, good Among Us etiquette is important because so much of the fun of the game is built on player interaction. This is the kind of game where it's really up to the players the difference between a smooth game and a laborious, awful game. A game that is a huge pain. Don't disconnect during a match. I mean, that's true of most games, but especially crappy with this one, because you can ruin the game in more than one way. If you are the imposter and you disconnect to avoid getting caught, you just denied the crew their win, and it's lame. Even worse is when one crewmate has tasks left and the imposter is going to win, so that crewmate just disconnects and the crew immediately wins. It's basically an easy win for crew members and just totally sucks all the fun out of being an imposter. Also, don't just immediately accuse people of being an imposter. It's fun at first if you want to just goof off, but eventually the random accusation will drag the game down and people just get sick of it. Whenever you make an accusation, give some proof, like I caught them coming off a vent, or I saw them kill some color in this room, or whatever. Doesn't have to be super detailed, but just some bit of evidence really makes it so that it's easier to take seriously. Don't do dumb stuff like trying to accuse someone as an imposter for revenge just to be stupid, because that gets old really fast too. A lot of players are just going to be annoyed with you. Also, don't call any unnecessary meetings. Just makes people angry. Like, basically be courteous. I mean, that's the simple, generalized version of this rule. Don't do things you don't need to, and don't do them excessively. Finally, at number 1, if you're really serious, be prepared to make notes. Like, if you use a legal pad, that's cool, but there's actually a website, among-us-detective.atlesque, I don't know how to say that, .com. I mean, it's this incredibly good note-taking website that you can keep open in a window while you're playing the game. It's super easy to use, it's intuitive, it allows you to easily organize things, information, observations, clues you've collected, contains a map tool. It's not just useful for crewmates either, like you can use it as an imposter to keep an eye out for anyone that might be onto them, but can also provide useful information like where vents connect, what sections of the map are covered by security cameras, etc., etc. Now, some people might consider using this cheating, but I'm going to straight up say, again, you could use a legal pad and keep track of things in this exact same way. So I don't know that I agree with that, but maybe ask your group before using this website. Say, are you cool with me using Among Us Detective? Just in case. You don't want to be a dick. Or maybe you do, I don't know. Also, quick bonus point, some tricks to save time. If you're serious about winning the game, there's a couple things you can do to save a few seconds. Like a lot of splash animations, like the shush at the beginning of the game and the kill animation, can be canceled out by clicking or tapping. They're short, maybe less than 2 seconds, but depending on the context, that may be a lot of time for you. Another way to save some time is to click just as the task complete splash appears, so you can move on and skip the last part of that animation. There's a hide and seek mode. It's basically just turning off emergency meetings and giving the crew just 1 or 2 small tasks and 1 common task. You increase the movement speed a little, give the crew a nice long view distance like 1.75, and the imposter only gets 0.75, and you pretty much got an interesting game. This mode is all about survival. Basically, the crew has to scramble at their tasks and finish them before they all get killed. It's a fun twist on a game that doesn't have a lot of depth, but it can be a lot of fun to play in a party setting like over Discord or when you're playing locally. So that's that. What do you think? You playing this game? You enjoying it? You gonna apply any of this information? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I am Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.